Hey, this is Vu, and today I'm going to be talking about a site on Mirage. Now, I'm going to use this as an example to show you why you probably don't want to just be straight up copying pro players in every scenario. Now, of course, there are plenty of things you can pick up from pro players, but you don't want to be just straight up copying them to the letter, because you're not going to pick up these reasons they're doing certain things. So if you're copying a pro player, you want to be considering the scenarios you're doing it in and the reasons you're doing it. So here on Mirage, you're going to notice that a lot of pro players have adapted this kind of aggressive style towards a ramp, looking for information and frags early on in the round to try and gain an advantage. The way you might see players doing this is very similar to how Fallen does this here. He throws a Molotov up close early, flashes it, and gets pretty close up. Now, he's going a little bit more aggressive here than he does on most rounds. However, this is something I've seen plenty of players do. He does this on his side here quite often with a smoke or with a Molotov. I believe it's Rain from the other side does the same thing on the other half, and it's actually pretty effective. However, you have to consider the reason they're doing this. So the reason you see pro players play this aggressive style is because of situations like this. It's because of the way executes look like and what's going to happen if you get caught in these passive scenarios with little to no information and you're playing here solo. Like most players will be playing A site essentially solo when an execute comes in, because their teammate's going to get smoked off, they're going to get mollied out, and it's just not going to look very good. So here's what's going to happen. Flash out, mollied under balcony, flashed again. Multiple players come out ramp, grab a trade kill at worst, and down goes Fallen. So you're going to notice this is the type of thing that will happen against coordinated executes. Mollies will come out below the balcony. They might even come out towards default. Players are going to have flashes and effective trade frags to deal with a player at tri-stack or default, and it's just going to be very hard for you to get very much done. So what you want to be doing is something a little bit different in solo queue. Now, the reason I single out solo queue on Mirage here is the same reason I single out solo queue on a variety of different maps, and it's because teams are less coordinated, they're going to be throwing less nades, less smokes, your team is going to be less able to support you in a lot of different ways, you're going to have much more kind of individual plays, and you're going to have a much better ability to kind of be in bad situations and play yourself out of it, because the opponents, especially terrorist sides, when they're going for an execute, which, more often than not in solo queue, they're really not going to be going for an execute, but when they do, you're going to have much more ability to actually play around your angles and grab frags. So what you're not going to see very often is a Molotov under balcony in tandem with well-timed flashes to prevent you from falling back to default. That's something you're generally not going to see. More often than not, you're not even going to see this Molotov under balcony. You're going to see a Molotov under balcony and players running out ramp, and you can kind of get them as they run out because they're not really prepared for it. You're going to see a lot of kind of not very good plays in matchmaking and in pugs. So you can really exploit that fact by playing these somewhat, exploitable spots. Under balcony and default are the two spots you probably want to be spending most of your time at when you're playing A site here on Mirage. Now, you do want to be mixing up certain things. You can mix up a little bit of aggression towards ramp here. Something that a lot of people don't know actually is if you crouch down here, you're going to see their feet up on the ledge there, and they actually can't see you at all. Even if they're crouching, they can't see you. So you have a bit of an advantage there if you just stay back here, crouch down, and look around there. It's something that most people don't know. It's not all that applicable, but I thought I'd mention that. So you can get aggressive there. You can get aggressive towards Palace a little bit, especially with an op. You can kind of come up here early and get this jump off, trying to get a pick on someone at the back of Palace like this, something like that. And what you're really trying to do, though, most of the time, is you're trying to play this humongous kind of 2 entry point site as a solo player. And it's very hard to do, and it's going to be very hard to do effectively. However, with a little bit of support from your teammates, with some smart play, and with the fact that your opponents aren't going to be exploiting a lot of these kind of exploitable spots like default, playing back here, kind of holding it and then peeking out here once in a while, or you can play around here where you have a pretty decent advantage on the player there, and you can also see people as they walk out, and it's a pretty good chance to get a kill there. You can even play up on top if you want. It's a little bit more vulnerable, but it's somewhat unlikely for a player to walk straight out Palace early round. They'll do that a lot if there's some pressure at top middle, but if they get punished for that once or twice, they're not really going to want to repeat it, and so you can have this kind of advantageous angle to find an entry, and that's kind of what you're trying to think here. A lot of the time, terrace teams will show early on in the half if they're going to be executing a lot or if they're going to be kind of just pugging it out. And if they're going to be pugging it out, oftentimes players will kind of walk pick out here, and you can actually find that fairly easy pick pretty often if you play this correctly. And if they're going to be going for those executes, simply playing under balcony with a pop flash is how most people will be playing it. However, I would highly recommend playing default a lot, because I think this is actually a more effective place to stay alive for longer when you're in solo queue. The reason for that is it's a lot easier actually to molly off Palace. Now you want to be mollying off Palace, I've talked about this before, you want to be doing that when the execute actually comes in, so you're preventing this player from kind of ambushing you, and you can focus on ramp for a good 12, 13, 14 seconds, whatever, without having to worry too much about Palace. And that gives your teammates time to rotate in and watch your Palace for you so that you can continue focusing on ramp. Then you can play around in this spot. You can throw out a flash like that, peek with it. It's hard for players to come up on you, whereas they can kind of come around like this and kind of surprise you without having too much ability for this player kind of jumping through the smoke here to support you too much, or for a player CT to support you at all. It's really kind of, they're in the open, but they're not far enough in the open for your teammates to support you. However, if you play towards default, again, you're still kind of not going to be supported quite enough. However, you're a little bit less in the open. It's a little bit easier for you to fall back to a safe spot, kind of like here. It's a little bit easier for you to isolate angles by peeking out just to clear out tri-stack, peeking out just to clear out ramp. And it's a little bit easier for you to get a little bit of support from a teammate maybe pushing through a smoke, maybe a teammate will come out through CT and support you, and they can actually support you a little bit better because you're not in such a kind of vulnerable position. So I really like playing towards default here, especially throwing a flash like that, something like that. And you can actually throw kind of weird smokes. If you throw a smoke at the bottom of the thing right here and you jump on top, that's actually going to be a bit of a one-way. Now most people don't know this, and it's not the most useful one-way of all time. However, it is a bit of a one-way. And you can certainly use that, especially if your opponent throws kind of a weak smoke that kind of screws up, that's supposed to land around here. You can use that. You can also use this angle around here. There's just so many ways you can use this default angle, and you can juke around it. And your main goal here is the exact same thing as your main goal when you're soloing any site, because like I said, you really are soloing this site. Stay alive for as long as possible. Get kills when you can, but more importantly, it's better to get one kill and stay alive than it is to get 2 kills and instantly die. Now, of course, on a site here, inevitably you're going to die eventually. So what you're trying to do, again, delay them, get as many kills as possible. Don't emulate the pros, because they have reasons for doing things that they do, and most often when you're in matchmaking, you're not going to see that type of thing happening, and generally you're going to notice that a site is a little bit more passive of a site. Now, I will mention finally CT and tri-stack. I think these are both very exploitable angles. I don't like either of them very much. You can get smoked off very easily. Tri-stack is in fact spammable, and you're completely open from connector. And when you're in solo queue, teammates are typically not going to be very good at holding on to connector. They're just going to oftentimes give it up. You're going to die. You're going to get shot in the back. It's just not very good. And there's no fallback option. If they do come out of ramp, you kind of peek out, take a couple shots, and then where do you go from here? You can't get into CT. You can't move really anywhere. So I don't like this spot very much. One spot that you could try that's actually pretty good is back here, trying to catch them as they cross the tri-stack. This is another angle kind of like on top of this box, where it's an off angle trying to find an entry if the opponent is playing a puggy style. However, typically when you're playing A-side on Mirage, unfortunately, you're going to be kind of pigeonholed into playing kind of expected spots. So it's really about playing these angles to the best of your ability and having teammates rotate in effectively. So anyways, thanks for watching, and I hope this helped.